And once again, I'd like to welcome everybody back to more content right here, brand new content on the Buffalo History Channel as we continue to highlight the history and historical figures and some of the legends of Buffalo television and radio. And right now, I have the pleasure to be joined by one of Buffalo's radio legends. He is a man of all generations, so to speak, coming to us live from Generation Studios, I guess. You might be in recent years, you might be familiar with him from the Don Robinson generation on AM 1400. But this gentleman has a extensive history in Buffalo radio and Buffalo media, and he's here to talk all about it. He's been around, and he's going to talk to us all about it. It is a pleasure to welcome the one and only Don Robinson to the Buffalo History Channel. Don, welcome, brother.
Hey, brother Doug, how you doing today, man?
I'm well, brother. I'm well.
Excellent. You know what? This is an honor and a privilege just to be here with the audience, everybody, checking out the program today. And hey, man, you got me right here in the heart. I'm really glad that, you were able to. First of all, how did you find me?
Well, we were always friends on Facebook, and we would, when I was living in Buffalo and we were running to each other throughout parts of the community, we would always have these long conversations about the state of the Buffalo Black media and the media in general. And
that's right.
So as I'm highlighting all these personalities, I'm like, let me go give Don a call. And and at the beginning of top of 2023, I had the unique pleasure of having showcasing a rare segment with one of Buffalo's probably most beloved personalities, the one and only Freddie Patrick.
Ooh.
And that got a lot of response. It was wonderful to see, just to see footage of him in his prime.
Yeah.
Because he don't do interviews.
He doesn't. As a matter of fact, there was a restaurant that was on the corner of Bailey and Broadway. And I happened to go into this restaurant one evening, and all of a sudden this guy turns and he says, "Hey, Don, how you doing?" And I looked, man, and there was Freddie Patrick. I was like, whoa, when you least expect it, a lot of times is when you run into somebody. So that was...
Especially Freddie.
Yes, especially Freddie, And I'm telling you, we were in this restaurant, and we must have talked for about a good 2 hours. Well, when people who are in the business of broadcasting get together, well, it's like Chris Rock said, "Hey, what's in the tea? Water." Well, this is some real nice stuff on the wall. Okay, get out, man. Because these people were ready to close, and we just started talking. We sat down, man, and we were there for a good long time. So, yeah, Freddie Patrick, that's my man. And listening to the program that you did with him, even a guy like me, it just goes to show you can always learn something. And from that particular interview, I learned so much from it. It was a mind blower. So thank you for doing that interview with Mr. Freddie Patrick.
Absolutely, man. It was definitely an honor. So I always like to start from the very beginning. Talk to us about how your beginnings in Buffalo in radio. I mean, where did it begin for you?
Well, you know what? A lot of it started with my mother, with my parents. Okay. A lot of times you'll find that young adults, they have an idea that's in their head. And unless you have the right people either around you or pushing you, a lot of times those ideas, they'll wither on the vine and they'll die. Now, I remember when I was 7, 8 years old, this notion came into my mind that I wanted to get into broadcasting. And this notion was so strong that my mom, she would always correct me whenever I would use improper diction, so to speak. As a matter of fact, one thing came to mind. A couple of friends of mine, they came and knocked on the door, and they didn't know that my mother was in the kitchen at the sink, and she was washing dishes. So they knocked on the door and they said, "Yo, Don, yo, man, why don't you let Ease on downstairs, and come on with us because we're going to be going around the corner to the store." My mother, she opened up the kitchen window and she said, "Now, that's not the way you're supposed to be saying anything. It's, excuse me, Don, will you please ask your parents if you can come downstairs so you can walk with us to the store?" So that was how she was. She
Hey,
was first, yo.
at least she said it in a nice way. Most mothers, my mother in particular, so and so is yelling in the house.
That's right. That's right. But she was that. Okay, first of all, she was the church pianist over at Pleasant Grove Baptist Church. My father, he was the church treasurer. All right. Now it was myself, my brother Lamar, my two sisters May and Cynthia, and we grew up in a family where whatever we wanted to try to become, they would do everything possible to help us achieve that. There's something else that I remember when I was, and this is kind of sad. When I was, well, not sad, but when I was in high school, I was going to a campus school over at Buff State College. All right, so I wanted to be an announcer.
Mm-hmm.
She knew this. So at campus school at the time, they had a bell. And instead of, like, for instance, the bell would ring, you'd be in homeroom. The bell would ring, you'd go to your next class. That bell would ring, you'd go to your next class after that. Well, at campus at the time, the bell would ring. And since campus school was on Buff State College's footprint,
Mm-hmm.
what I would do is leave and go over to the student union. All right. So now, because I had homeroom, and then I had it was two like lazy periods, like not gym or not English or math or anything like that. It was like a study hall for 2 hours. So from 9:30 until 11:15, they didn't care where you were as long as you were on campus. So I'd go over to the student union. There was a radio station there, WSCB. I was looking at the guys while they were on the air, and they would say, "Hey, what is it you want?" I said, "Man, I want to be a radio announcer. Man, I like this right here." So these guys, it was J.J. O'Brien, it was Jim Pastrick, it was Don Cobiella, all right, and Brian Walker. Now, three of those guys are on Oldies 104. There's another one that's on Star 102.5, and the other one went out of town. And there's another one that's over on Genesee Street, and it's WEC Radio. All right, now. So we were all, and as a matter of fact, Rick Pfeiffer, who went to Channel 4.
Mm-hmm.
So at that particular point in time, everybody who was at this WSCB was good enough where they actually got into radio. So what they did, thinking that they were going to kind of like show me that I needed to hone my craft, they said, "Well, tomorrow, come on in, we're going to put you on the air." And they were like kind of laughing. The next day I went there, I went on the air, and they were like, "You know what, you're really good. I think that you should really do this." And I already knew it. All right. Yeah. But it was that little thing that just helped along. Now, here's my mom. She would give me a ride to Buff State College every Saturday because she knew that this is where this radio station was. And she would do this knowing that she would never hear me on the air because this radio station was only on campus. You had to plug your radio in to an outlet on campus, and that's how the signal was transmitted to all the dorms that were on campus at the time. Mm-hmm. Now you have transmitter, low power FM frequencies, so it has a range. But back then, this is how they did it. And she did that, and I thanked her to this day. I mean, there was just so many things then that happened that I was just humbled behind it.
WSCB Buffalo.
Right now, with a little bit of soul, okay, right. It's a little bit of summertime seasonal music for you from the Emotions, and they're dreaming about a black Christmas. Make it around 5:08. Can't be late, getting things straight from the survey of funky music.
Look at you, look at me.
This is the sound of campus-wide radio in Buffalo. WSCB 620.
Okay, you're turned on to it, baby. With around 39 degrees on the outside, you've got the sound of a group called the Ponderosa Twins Plus One at around 5:17 on the music scene, and they're just trying to say that they're... Now, on a much more musical Monday, with around 39 degrees on the outside, we've got the dramatics on the inside. What you see is what you get. Say, this is radio station WSCB 620 at Buffalo State in New York, the Empire State, where all land surveyors must be licensed by the New York State Education Department.
What was the next stop? And I know you were at I don't know how far ahead in your history I'm jumping, but I know you were at WBLK.
Okay, now, well, okay. That's a story in itself. Here we go. My parents would make us go to church every Sunday. You know how it was in the black community.
Yeah, yeah.
After church, I had set up a little radio station in my parents' basement. All right. So what I did one day, and see, this is something that if I could have at the time had somebody help me through this next idea that I did, I would have been a billionaire right now. And that was this. My parents went to church one Sunday. I told them I wasn't feeling well. So my mother, she let me stay at home. I went and got a bed slat from my bed. I connected some wire to it. I ran outside, got a garbage can top, and that garbage can handle fit that bed slat. I went upstairs and nailed it on the back of our house and ran the wire down to the basement. That was my antenna. Well, if somebody could have helped me figure that out, what were people then years later doing on the back of their houses? Putting satellite dishes up. This garbage can top on this bed slat on the back of my parents' house, and they'd come home and they'd have their head down because the neighbors would be like, look what that boy's doing to their house, all right? But, hey, it all worked out.
It was make-believe, basically, what you were doing.
It was make-believe.
What was make-believe became reality.
It became reality.
Generations later.
I don't know if you remember this, but with a lot of radio announcers or wannabe radio announcers back then, you would hope that the DJ on the radio wouldn't say nothing at the end of the song or wouldn't say nothing at the beginning of the song, because what were you going to do? No one was going to hear you. You were practicing your intros and out cues. So what happened one day, I had this radio on my shoulder and I'm walking down Hamlin Road and I was going over to T's over on Northland. So I had my radio and I'm talking, hey, you know, Don Robinson on WBLK. Well, this guy by the name of G.W. Albright just happened to be coming out of a driveway on Hamlin, and he heard me, and he says, hey, man, you sound pretty good, all right? So he asked me if I had an audition tape. So I said, well, you know what, I can put one together. So he says, I'll tell you what, get one together, and where do you live at around here? And I told him the house right there is 17 Hamlin Road. He said he was going to come over the next day. When I told my mother that this guy was going to come over the next day, do you know what she did? She cleaned up the whole house. She ran down in the basement. She made sure I had the studio clean, you know, because she wanted to make an impression, because she knew that this is how much I wanted to do this, all right? So he comes over, he gets the audition tape. He hands the audition tape to Don Allen Sr. at WBLK, because G.W. Albright, what he was a preacher. He knew Don Allen Sr. with his gospel show on WBLK, and Don Allen Sr. listened to the tape, But at the time, he was like, "Well, no, he's rough. He's got to hone his craft a little bit more." And he
Yeah,
came
of
back and told me, and
course.
there was no big thing about it. I said, "Okay, fine," and it just made me want to do it. Now,
Right.
are you ready for this one? Something I'll never forget. With this little makeshift radio station in the basement, I had a friend, Richard, and what we would do is set up a time. I'd pretend I was on the air from 10 o'clock until noon.
Mhm.
Richard would come over from noon until 2. All right.
To
Are you ready
relieve you.
for this? And he'd relieve me one day. And this just goes to show you how God works in mysterious ways. Okay. We're in my parents' basement. All of a sudden, this car pulls up in the driveway. Now, I don't know if you remember this. There was a shooting back in 1975 or about 1973 on Brunswick Boulevard. And there
Okay.
was another friend of mine, Milton and Jerry. Milton just got a brand new car.
Uh-huh.
Milton pulled up in the driveway and said, "Yo, Don, yo, man, Richard, why don't y'all come and ride with me in my brand new car?" We said no, because I was on the air. I had some production work, and Richard was getting ready to go on the air. They backed out the driveway,
Yeah.
rode around the corner, and there was a guy by the name of Larry Lewis. Back then, you had the Manhattan Lovers, the Matadors, the Alaturks, and
I
all
was
that.
about to ask you, was those the gangs involved?
And they ended up shooting Larry Lewis on his porch. And those 3 guys went to prison. Now imagine if we would have stopped what we were doing and got in the car for the ride, what would have happened? So God
Exactly.
works in mysterious ways, and
Indeed,
thank
he
you
does.
that we didn't, So what happened after that was this. I continued putting my audition tapes together. Eventually, what happened was Don Allen Jr. got in contact with William DeSint, who was Bradley J. Cool. And Bradley J. Cool talked to Frank Lorenz. And Bradley said, "Frank, the guy's ready now." And then I got on WBLK. The first thing that I was doing was the news. And this was for about, I want to say maybe 7 months. Then there was a program called Express Yourself.
Yes.
Came on at 12 noon, and it came on again that night at 10 o'clock. And it went off at 11 o'clock. All right. So Don Allen Jr. was the host on Express Yourself.
Oh, really?
I was the one, that was answering the telephones at the time.
I will say, I guess that was before Freddie was on it.
That was before Freddie was on there.
I see.
The day that I left WBLK is the day Freddie Patrick was hired, and he came on after me. And the only reason why I left, well, I had to get off the air. And the reason was this, and now it just shows you how things have changed. Back then, I had to get off the air because I didn't have the broadcast endorsement for my 3rd-class license. All right.
Right. You had to take, I remember we had to take a test and get a license for that.
And then, so I think it was elements 1 and 2, but I didn't pass the broadcast endorsement. So I was on the air, and I was supposed to have, on my own, gone to the federal building, which was
on Delaware.
On Delaware.
Yep,
and
I remember.
taking that other exam, all right, to get it. But I never did it. The time came up, and I had to get off the air. They hired Freddie Patrick, and then that started from right there, and there you go. But now the thing about that 10 o'clock to 11, what happened was this. Mansfield Man was supposed to come on the air from midnight until 6 o'clock in the morning. All right. Mansfield, well, this is how I eventually got on the air. Mansfield was messing up and he wasn't coming in, so Frank put me on from midnight to 6, and that's a whole nother story. This was the one where Don fell asleep at 3 o'clock in the morning and the record was going and people knocking on the door. And the only reason why that happened, it was a party that we had a station party. And you got to remember something. I'm 16 years old, operating a 50,000 watt stereo FM station. Had never been up all night in my whole life anyways, all right? Because I was always going to school, and so everybody was drunk. And Frank was like, "You sure you can handle it?" I'm like, "Oh man, no problem. Don, you're gonna hang in here with me, right?" He was like, "Nah, man, I gotta go home." So I ended up staying there all night long. And the thing was, I was getting so tired, I went to play The Big Payback because I was looking for a song that was long enough. And The Big Payback by James Brown was about 16 minutes. So I went into the front lobby and I saw this flat couch, and I said, "Just let me get like 2 minutes of these," and it was boggy.
I remember them couches, that couch stuff.
Yeah.
I've done that too.
You did that too?
Yep.
Well, now I don't feel so bad.
Currently from WBLK Stereo 94, it's 34 degrees. This is Don Robinson reporting. Take you for an interview right now. Excuse me, sir, do you really dig the Don Robinson generation? I'm quite sure that I can get into it too. This is Redbone from the LP of the same name. Let's go to 23rd Street. We find a whole lot of people who are mad. WBLK! And it's exactly 1:30 in the stereo city of Buffalo, New York, from Jumpin' WBLK. You've got Don Robinson bringing on the Master Mourner, Al Green. It's called Living for You. WBLK! You might not believe me, but outside it feels like spring. It's 3:29 in the stereo city of Buffalo, New York, from Jumpin' WBLK. You've got Don Robinson and the generation in your backyard getting down. The temp breeze from the cooker, and it's entitled At Last.
But those were some good days. Those are some good days. Do you remember a guy by the name of Mark? I can't remember his last name. I think he may have been there when you were there. He was a white guy, blonde hair. Mark. I don't remember that
vaguely, because I wasn't at WBLK until 2000. So the name Mark doesn't. I remember a Mark Plimpton who was, I think he was in the sales department, but that's about the extent of it. But I was also going to say, make a little footnote of what you stated earlier when you said you were 16 years old.
Yeah.
A lot of people today don't even have any idea that back in the day, a lot of your personalities, particularly even at WUFO, they were all teenagers.
Yeah.
Literally starting out on the air. They were literally on the air. They were still in high school, would get out of school and come to the radio station and be on air and be personalities as teenagers. Yeah. So that's kind of how a lot of people don't really know that.
They don't know that. And one of the weird things, I want to say maybe about a good 4 months before I officially got hired at WBLK, there was a friend of mine who lived on the other half of Hamlin, and you may know him. His name is Double D, Dwayne Donovan.
Yes. Yep.
Okay. What Dwayne used to do, because he knew that I wanted to be a radio announcer, I had that much interest, and I want anybody who could help me. You know what I mean? I wasn't shy to let them know. What Dwayne used to do was he had this little Volkswagen, and it was a standard. He would drive down Hamlin 5 o'clock in the morning, because Dwayne was working at WUFO over on LaSalle. All right. So now he had to sign the station on. And what people don't know, for a good, I want to say 6 months, I was the one pushing the button, signing the station on, while Dwayne was in the studio getting his 45s and his show prep and everything together. But this is the weird thing. Dwayne would stop down at my house, and he would somehow accidentally let his foot off the clutch of his car, and the car would shut off. So by the time I got downstairs, he'd say, "Don, man, my battery's dead." I'd say, "Okay." So what I do is get behind the car and push them. I'm running, pushing the car down Hamlin, hit pop the clutch, and then I'd jump in and we'd go over to Freddy's Donuts on Main and Michigan. Get the donuts there that were just coming off the press. They were nice and hot. And then
you have to fight the police for them? I'm sure you did.
Yeah, you're right.
Them donuts wasn't no joke back in the day, man.
It wasn't, but the thing was, even those donuts, they just, all that sugar, man, and your body was able to handle it. And, it was something. There was no coffee that we were drinking. We were just loading up on all that sugar at the time. And he'd go on the air, man, and he'd do his thing. And you know what? I don't know why it never really turned into like an employment at WUFO, because there was Don Mullins that was there. There was Kelly Carson that was there. There was Al Parker that was there. And I mean, and we all got along. But I guess maybe at that time it just really wasn't meant to be. All right.
Okay.
And like I say, it wasn't too long after that Don Allen got in contact with Bradley, and then there you go. I was on BLK. So
okay, so you were at WUFO first, before you got to
so
WBLK.
The way the stations went, it was WSCB. All right. Now, here's a little footnote to that. WSCB, I got an internship for, I want to say maybe a month and a half. Now, you got to remember, Doug, here I am at this time, I was like 15 years old, okay? I got an internship at WKBW when they were on Main Street, all right? So they were in the back where that dentist office is. Yep. And as a matter of fact, Tom Jones, when he did the weather outside, he would be able to look out the front window, because on the side of the television station is where they had the door open, and then they had the little set there, and he'd be standing out there doing the weather outside. So, I had at that time free range to the television station with Rick Hazar and Irv Weinstein. All right. And if I just would have known at that moment how blessed I was and known how to maneuver like you would have done, I would have been on television back then.
You were right there with the big three.
I was right there with the big three. But you know how I ended up getting the boot out of KB? What you do, man? We were doing a contest. All right. And the girls would call up and I'd be like, "Hey, sweetheart, how you doing? What's your phone number?"
That'll do it. Oh, that's what you went and did. Okay.
Yeah, that's what I went and did, man. So, that lasted like that long, and just
they Me Too'd you, huh?
They just went off and did something else. But those were the days,
Well, let me backtrack a little bit. Now, you mentioned WUFO. What were some of your memories working at a WUFO? Because I don't know everybody has WUFO stories.
Yeah. You figure being in there, the main thing that I remembered doing there was walking. Okay, there was a glass partition, and on the other side of the glass partition were the transmitters. So I'd walk out into the hall and walk all the way down to the back of WUFO, and then make a right-hand turn, and that's where the newsroom was that was back there. So what Dwayne would have me do is pull the news off the ticker tape, and he'd have me do the weather from in the back there. And I mean, man, it wasn't, like I say, it wasn't a real employment, but where I was like, I was getting a paycheck, but I was there every day with him. And it was just a lot of fun back then.
Okay.
And I don't know how or why that stopped. All right. But, Dwayne, he started doing his thing, and then he left town, and I guess he went to Texas. And I think maybe that's how that stopped. So Dwayne went to Texas, and Don got me over at BLK. So, and I was there for quite a while, but when Freddie came and I left, then what happened was I was building this studio that you see behind me.
Okay.
Right. And at the time, there was the Soul Food Cafe that was on while I was here building the studio. And this was a station that was being broadcast on the old WYSL, all right, whistle, and it was out of Texas. And they called it, they changed something about it where it became AM 1400, all right?
Right.
So here's the thing. When that happened, I'm in the studio here and I'm like, man, you know what? I'd like to work there. And I tried to figure out if they were actually here or if this was a signal coming into Buffalo from someplace else. So I did a little research, found out that they were over at Corporate Parkway. So then what happened was I went over there and put in an application. Now here is another. If God wants you to do something and he knows the purity of your heart, he is going to make certain things happen.
Right.
All right. And in this particular instance, here we go. I put in an application at 3WS. Sue O'Neill, she sends me a letter back. We don't have any openings right now, but when we do, I have your letter and your audition tape. It'll be on file for a year. All right. I got that letter. Let's say it was a Tuesday. Wednesday, a guy by the name of James Cornelius,
Yes.
who knew that I was on BLK, gets in contact with me, and he says, Don, I need you to do me a favor. I'm like, what's that? He says, I'm going to be going on vacation because Sue hired James Cornelius to voice track on 3WS. All right. So James would be working at Metro. He would, on his split, run out to Corporate Parkway, take an hour and a half to voice track that day's show, and then he'd go back to work. All right. And then he'd be on his bus and he would listen every now and then to see how his show was progressing on the air while he was driving the bus. And people would be like, I just heard you on the radio. How you driving the bus? You know, so he had to explain that. So now here we go. Sue O'Neill says to me in the letter, we don't have an opening. I'm going to keep it on file for a year.
I've heard that many times.
James Cornelius doesn't know or didn't know that I even put in an application.
Right.
James gets in contact with me and he says, I'm going on vacation. Could you do me a favor and fill in for me? I'm like, what? He's like, come to the station after you get off work at 5 o'clock, and I'm going to show you how to voice track so that then while I'm on vacation, you can come in, you can voice track the show for me, and whatever I would have gotten paid that week, I'll just give you that paycheck. I'm like, fine. So now, imagine this one, Doug. I'm in the production room. Behind me, there is a big glass and a hallway. So now, James is on vacation. He didn't tell Sue that he has somebody to fill in for him. So now she's walking down this hallway, and she looks in the production room, and she sees somebody who's not James Cornelius. So she opens up the door and says, who are you? And I said, my name is Don. So she's like, wait a minute. Are you the Donald that just gave me an audition tape and I told you that I was going to keep your on file for a year? And I'm like, yeah. Well, you ready for this one?
Okay.
That turned into 13 years of working there.
There you go.
Paycheck, everything. And you're ready for this one. Never had an application. You know, like how you work someplace and you have an application?
Right.
What they did was they had me as a talent where they were paying me the talent fee because all I was really doing was taking the 2 hours because it was Friday. I'd go in on a Friday when I started working for them. So I'd go in on Friday. and it would be Saturday and Sunday where you heard the show. Now, that Saturday and Sunday, I was at home because on that Friday, I had all my show prep. I'd go in there, I'd dump all the music that they had in the system, and I put my music in line with my sweepers and commercials, well, their commercials, but then Saturday and Sunday rolled around, you heard the Don Robinson Generation. And people were like, how come the music you play is different than the music that they're playing? But everybody was loving the music that I was playing, that James was playing, and that's why they let the two of us basically have free reign with the station, with the music, because when they looked at the numbers, they saw something that they couldn't believe themselves. You know what I mean?
And yes, you and Dr. James Cornelius, it can be said, y'all were AM 1400.
Right. There you go.
You were. You were that.
AM 1400, Solid Gold Soul. Good afternoon. I am the Dr. James Cornelius, along with your main man, Don Robinson. Hey, Donnie, who was that? That was the Brothers Johnson that we just heard. Right now, let's plug in to Luther Vandross.
You're listening to the Dr. James Cornelius on AM 1400, Solid Gold Soul.
Baby, please don't leave because I'm down on my knees.
That sounds just like you. That sounds just like you begging.
Oh, man, I'm constantly begging. And you know what?
Uh-huh.
Women love it when a man is really big.
I'm going to call your wife.
Call her.
I'm going to call her right now.
I'll call your wife.
I'm going to call your wife right now.
But wait a minute. Your wife tells me that you beg just as much as I do.
And you the beggingest dude ever. So, man, you know what? You remind me of Keith Sweat. I saw you out there on the dance floor, man, moving and grooving like you thought you was Keith Sweat Friday night.
Ixnay, I told her I wasn't doing nothing, man. I told her I wasn't dancing. You're going to get me busted now. James Cornelius, you're a prognosticator on AM 1400.
Wait. What in the world is a prognosticator?
A prognosticator.
Whatever it is, man, I can't even pronounce it. What's the next song, Donnie?
Let's see here. What about some Lashik?
Doug, what were you doing September 11th, 2001?
September 11th, 2001. I can remember specifically, I was working overnight at WBLK. I remember I was coming home because I was staying with my father for a period of time. Mm-hmm. And I was already in bed sleep that morning. My father knocks on the door, wakes me up. Douglas, turn on the TV set. You might want to turn on the TV set because it said that an airplane just ran into the World Trade Center. I was half asleep and woke right up and just jumped up and then turned on the TV and then saw everything. So that's pretty much how I found out about it.
And it was, well, what channel? Any channel. It don't matter.
Yeah, exactly. I think I might have had it on Channel 4. I think.
Okay. Now, are you ready for this one? Your friend, James Cornelius, he was to come on the air at 12 noon because his show was Monday through Friday on 1400 at the time. All right.
Right.
James got in contact with me on September 11th at 9 o'clock in the morning, woke me up out of a dead sleep, just like how you were sleeping.
Right.
And he says, Don, I need you to do me a big favor. And I'm like, what's that? James says, well, you know, radio, all it is theater of the mind. Because of the fact that they can't see you, depending on how you present it, he says, me and you could be the top dogs in this whole city of Buffalo.
Yep.
I'm like, okay, what you got up your sleeve? After he told me, I said, James, we're going to burn in hell behind this one. Here we go. Douglas.
Okay.
September 11th. James calls me and he says, AM 1400 Solid Gold Soul, as everybody knows, you know, we had this terrible mishap that happened in New York City. It just happens that Don Robinson is in New York City right now. Don, can you tell me what's going on? Well, James, I was in Times Square and I got all these people that are walking past me right now, and I just want to let you know a lot of people are crying, people are scared. We have police officers that are running around, and theater of the mind. All right, Douglas.
That's how you do it.
I'm at home right now talking to you. I was at home that morning.
I'm not even mad at you.
Yeah. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah,
Theater
absolutely.
of the mind. And what they ended up doing was, I'll say this. James, when he called me at 9 o'clock and told me what he wanted to do, in my studio here, I have this gigantic TV over on the wall, and I recorded a little bit of CNN. All right. And the interviewer was talking with somebody. So I had that recorded. Now I knew what he was going to say. Right. So I muted the interviewer and I'm like, James, I got somebody here. And excuse me, sir, would you come over? Tell me, what are you feeling right now? And I hit the button. Oh, it's really sad. I saw the plane when it was, yeah. So theater of the mind. So then I James, I'll let you get back to the show. I'll talk to you later on this afternoon. It's a whole lot of smoke and everything, but I'll talk with you later on. This is Don from New York City. Take it away. And so James did his thing, and that's how it, man, please. We were going to burn in hell behind that one, but we pulled it off.
Yeah, but sometimes behind the scenes, it's a lot of things that our listeners and viewers don't know that can go on behind these, even with phone callers. Sometimes when I was working I can remember when I was working for Empire Sports Network, and we were starting up a show called Fan TV. One of the when the show was in its early stages, and we were trying to establish our viewership. One of the things that we would do was many of us were production assistants on staff, about maybe 10 of us or so. And we did various things. And sometimes during the live show, some of us would take turns calling into the show from an office in the back of the building or something, just so that we could show that we had callers. So those are just for our viewers. That's one of the many tricks of the secrets. Yeah. Well, they're not that much of secrets, really. I mean, you work in the business. You pretty much, everybody that works in the business knows it. But that's kind of some of the things that you do, like you said, theater of the mind. Basically. Theater of the mind. Now, there's two other points as far as BLK that just now came to mind. Okay. I got so much. Here we go. Remember, I was talking about from 10 o'clock until 11 o'clock. How I was answering the phone for DA for Express Yourself. Yes.
All right. Mansfield Mans was supposed to come on at 12 midnight. Now, here we go. From 11 o'clock until 12 midnight, Frank Lorenz came in and he said, what are we going to do for this hour? Because Don was going to be leaving, and I was only scheduled to work until 11 o'clock. So he says, well, what do you think that we should do for this hour between 11 o'clock and 12? So Don Allen says, you know what? Why don't we take an album and play it, the whole thing, one side, and then flip it over, and then play the other side between 11 and 12 o'clock. Frank liked it. Now, later on down the line, that turned into what? The Quiet Storm with Doug, and there you go. You see what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. All right. So now, another thing, and that's this. WNED channel 17 downtown. Okay. It was WBLK's 50th anniversary, if I'm not mistaken.
Okay.
Whoever the program director was at BLK, when they did that little function, they had Ed Kilgore and all these other broadcasters.
I think the PD might have been Chris Reynolds. Don't quote me on it.
I think so. Bald head.
No. No, he didn't have a bald head. No.
Okay. Because I have a Plex machine, if my phone, and because I saved it. But what happened was this: Wikipedia. All right. Wikipedia at the time, I was the one that typed in all the information that he read to everybody in that room as far as the very first song that was played on WBLK back then, all right, how people think that it's, BLK is for black, but it's not. It was for somebody else. And the first song, as a matter of fact, I was on the air 3 o'clock in the afternoon. Frank comes in because George Murray, who was the chief engineer, for a week prior was setting up the limiters and the parameters so that the stereo exciter would work properly. And the one song that he was constantly using, but he wouldn't let me play the whole thing because then he said that it was something pertaining to the FCC where it was a whole song. He'd only do like maybe 25 or 30 or 40 seconds of it, all right? And that was Love Unlimited Orchestra, Love's theme. And this would happen at around about 2:30, 3 o'clock in the morning, because remember, when Mansfield Mans got fired and Frank put me in his spot from midnight until 6 in the morning, that's the time when the chief engineer would come on and will come in and he would try to set up the stereo signal for the station. So it was a Monday afternoon, 3 o'clock. And it was the beginning of the brand new week, and there was the WBLK Funky 40, where they then changed the music for the brand new week, all right? So, for instance, Bobby Womack's I'm Looking for Love was the WBLK Blick Pick of the week, that particular week. And then you had, Roosevelt Tucker, he was in there doing his thing. So what happened with the Funky 40 was it started at 3 o'clock. Frank Lorenz comes in and says, Don, are you ready? And I'm like, yeah, I'm ready. So behind me, there was a transmitter and the switch at the bottom of it. So I flipped the switch. The light went red for stereo. And the very first song actually played in its entirety in stereo was Marvin Gaye's Let's Get It On. All right. And what he did when he was talking to everybody for that 50th anniversary, he mentioned my name. I wish they would have, found me like you did, because I would have really enjoyed being there in the audience,
Yeah.
He called up all these people. He mentioned my name like about 3 or 4 times. And, so, I mean, that, it was good in itself, but just to be there and just to, soak it in with everybody else, because it was real nice the way they presented it.
Yeah, I saw that. I did see that video clip of it on YouTube. So, and actually that was Chris Reynolds who was the PD, because now I remember I saw him go up to the
go to
the podium to give an acceptance
there
speech.
You go. Yeah.
And they acknowledged it for the radio stations for this 50th anniversary, because they did the same thing early on with WUFO, and I actually was present for those particular ceremonies. So, but I mean, you mentioned WBLK didn't stand for black. What actually, for the benefit of our viewers and younger people that might be watching, what actually did it stand for?
It was Benjamin L. Kulik. He was one of the investors with the Hound Dog at the time that had put in the money, and then the Hound eventually bought him out, and the Hound was the sole owner, of the radio station itself. Because you got to remember, when the Hound died, December 20, it was either one of those James Brown moves. It was either December 25th, because James Brown died December 25th.
Yeah.
All right. So with George, it was either the 25th or the 24th when he died, and they were trying to figure out who was going to take the station over, because Frank at the time, he really didn't want to do anything with the station. Frank he was young. All right. Come on. Here you are. You're like, what was he at the time? Maybe about 24, 25. All right. And now you are all of a sudden thrust in as the owner of a radio station, so he had other things in life that he wanted to do, but he understood that he had to step up to the plate. And so he did his thing, and I guess that was something else that surprised me, but not really. when I heard the interview you did with Freddie Patrick. And Freddie said that he was what, operations manager or station manager or station, what was it?
Right. Well, actually, it wasn't me that did that interview in that clip. That clip was actually from 1982. That credit goes to Octavia Hudson.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
And looking at that, seeing how young everybody was back then, oh man, it just brought back a flood of memories. So that was, like I say, once again, man, I really enjoyed that particular interview, that was on the Buffalo History Channel. And I, as a matter of fact, go back and I look at it even now.
Yeah.
Just to see. And then Doug Blakely, he was in there, and oh wow. And so and then to see you when you did the your last show, was it at WUFO?
That was that's on YouTube. That was at BLK. I did. There's a video of me when I did my sign off at WBLK. That was August 29th, I think, of 2000. It was definitely in 2004 when I signed off the Quiet Storm and did that.
Yeah. It's something else that's really strange now that I'm thinking about this. When I was young, we had lived on Edna Street. All right. Edna is off of Michigan by the old rock pile. All right. It was 28 Edna. When we moved out of that house, the Harris family moved into that house. Now, the name Harris might be in the back of your mind, but you can't really pinpoint who it was. It was Danny Harris.
That's what I was thinking.
Moved into the house. So you figure that broadcasting flair, you know what I mean? I mean, it's just the similarities and so many coincidences. Is that what it really is, or is it something else?
Right.
And I thought about that because I talked with Danny, and I said, Danny, you lived on Edna Street, didn't you? And he's like, yeah, Don. I said, what was the address? And we both said 28. I'm like, wow.
That's
when
amazing.
I moved out, and he was a kid and I was a kid, little did we know that we'd both be in broadcasting later on down the line.
Right.
Yeah.
Now, you mentioned earlier, I was going to ask you this. When you said you lived over on Hamlin. Was it Hamlin right near? Did you live near Donaldson Road?
Well, Donaldson was the next street over, but I was between Wohlers and Lonsdale.
Well, Wohlers and Lonsdale. Okay.
Was between Wohlers and Humboldt.
I asked that.
McCaw.
Yeah, I asked that question because my grandparents lived on Hamlin. The number of the house escapes me at this point, but it was like they were like about, I want to say maybe 2 to 3 doors down from Donaldson Road. Not Donaldson. Well, wait. You said
Donaldson and Hamlin run parallel to each other.
You know what? Wait. Now I remember. You said between Wohlers and Lonsdale.
Right.
That's okay. That's the same block as my grandparents. I had the streets mixed up a little bit.
Okay. And what were their names?
Ruffin. Reverend Jacob C. Ruffin and Sarah Francis Ruffin. Those were my grandparents.
And they were between Wohlers and Lonsdale.
Yes.
Really?
Yep, they were close.
Were they close to Wohlers or close?
No,
to
they were closer to Lonsdale because
really?
down Lonsdale is where it goes right towards St. Luke.
Right, Lonsdale crosses like all the streets. For instance, it's Northland, Donaldson, Hamlin, Brunswick, Butler, and Goulding.
Yeah.
All right, and then you got East Ferry.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, my granddad
runs up.
Right. My granddad was a minister at the at the church on Southampton, Varick Church on Southampton.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow. Now you know who else was over on Hamlet? He was a councilman, Mr. Johnson.
Yes, yes.
Right?
Horace Billy Johnson. Yep.
Horace Billy Johnson. There
Yep.
you go. Yeah. So isn't it a small world?
Yes, it is. Yes, it
Small
is.
world. Yeah, yeah. So there you go, man. There was I mean, there's still just so much. But one of the things that kind of like really gets to me nowadays is how everything has changed. All right. For instance, you always hear, remember where you were, so that either A, you don't make the same mistake, or B, so that you understand where you came from. So now you have a path to help guide you to where you want to go. All right. Now, when it comes to us, it almost seems as if we will shun or forget or want to forget the past. One real quick example, all right? Alex Haley, he did Roots back in the day. Okay. Years go by, and now you got your 12 Years a Slave, and you got, what was the one where they showed it in the White House, where the guy, when he was a slave, but he went to teach. They wanted him to teach black slaves the Bible, and when he tried to get away, they actually skinned him at the end of the movie.
That's Birth of a Nation. Nat
Birth
Turner.
of a Nation. Nat Turner.
The new version, the Nate
Right.
Nate Parker's version of
There
not
you go.
D.W. Griffith, but Nate Parker's version of Birth of a Nation.
There you go. What you notice now is this. You'll ask people, hey, what do you think about that? And people will say, man, I don't want to see no more slave movies because, why do I want to see stuff like that? Or it make me want to go out and hurt somebody, all right? But if you look
I've said that.
okay, right. But now let's look at this. When it comes to white folk, all right, they will, in your face, remember September 11th, remember the Titanic, remember John F. Kennedy when he got assassinated, remember, the Bushes, remember Ronald Reagan, all right? And when it even comes to music, they will have radio stations where they will play Chicago. They'll play Bachman Turner Overdrive, because it's what they remembered growing up, and it's those memories. Just like you have that station on Genesee Street. Look how popular it is. Whereas in the black community, back in the day, everybody was saying the baddest band in the land, Earth, Wind, and Fire. You have all the music that they produced. You have your Stevie Wonder. You have the Jackson 5. There's no station now that plays that. The station that you would listen to hear that would be that oldies station on Genesee Street. Now, why is it that we will shun what got us to where we are? And that's it. It's things like that I just don't understand. And also this, when was the last time you turned on your television and you saw a black male on TV?
Yeah.
Now,
specifically,
Specifically, the local television stations will have black women on TV. And you know what? I like to look at something soft every now and then, but something that Anita Baker told me years ago, and it was, Anita Baker said this one thing: silence over time is betrayal. All right. So she says, if you're able to, with your platform, talk and stir up the idea in people's heads, well, then maybe something will happen behind it. Now, you know what? Hey, and I'm the first to admit it. I haven't done all that I should have done. But see, that's where a Doug Ruffin comes in to play at. The other is this. For these young black boys, you can't be a man if you don't see a man. All right. If the narrative on television is in the black community, they're always doing something, they're shooting each other and all this, okay, and the news isn't there to cover the good things, like the chess club that's going to be taking place every Thursday at your Wegmans or your Dashes sitting over in the corner, all right? I mean, so what is it that we're missing, that we're not doing, that we're not going to these stations and saying, hey, how come there's nobody like Doug that's on the air? You know, you'll look at the programming a lot of times.
It wasn't from lack of trying. Believe me.
You ready for this one? And this is something else. When you have knowledge, sometimes it hurts having the knowledge, knowing that nothing is ever going to happen from it. Perfect example, all right? When television stations, and I'm sure you've seen this before, they'll turn around and they'll say, there's Verizon wants to cancel the Buffalo Bills game. We want you to call 1-800-I-LOVE-MY-BILLS, all right, and tell them not to take their programming off because you're going to miss the Bills, you're going to miss the Price is Right unless you call. So they are point blank in your face when it's something that's going to benefit them, okay? But they are supposed to have their license checked, and then in that checking, it's supposed to show that they are serving the community where their license is from. So now, if that's the case, Byron Allen did the right thing where he sued and got what, $10 billion? All right, because what? The black community isn't being served. If they're going to put the Doug Ruffin show on, why does it have to be at 3 o'clock in the morning? Why can't the Doug Ruffin show, with the program quality that he's able to produce, take the place of that Price is Right show locally and be on at 10 or 11 o'clock in the morning, where it should be, where people are up and they'll be able to see it? So unless we go there as a people and we say, you cannot put this programming for yourself on there because this isn't what the community needs. We need to see people that look like us, that have our issues at hand, that have solutions or going to try to make solutions happen so that then we can progress our people like you're progressing yours 24 hours a day, 7 days a week.
Yeah.
So, you know, unless we can stand up and be the men that we're saying we should be, we're constantly going to be in the background. You know, they want to make you feel like, oh, you're an angry black man. Well, you should be angry.
Yeah,
because
you should
look
be.
at what's happened over all this time. But they want you to feel self-conscious by even saying it. And that's what's wrong. That's just my opinion. I've always believed that, you know. So I don't know. Maybe you feel different. How do you feel?
Well, I mean, the one thing that I'm seeing with, you know, there is this whole effort now to increase the image, just not just locally, but just overall on, like, particularly, like, we have this platform on YouTube, and there's a whole thing called black male media. You know, and it is a real effort. Like, when you look through YouTube, I don't know how often you look at it, but there's a lot. Yeah, there's a multitude of black male media, black male led media, black male centered media. Most of it, I will say, focuses on, you know, black male and female relationships. You know, you've had the success of, you know, with the late Kevin Samuels and, you know, the Black Manosphere and stuff, like things of that nature, that, you know, that basically focuses more on relationships, but you do have some other areas where they focus on other issues that deal with, that black men deal with, like health issues and issues of the black family. And they deal with politics. They tend to veer more. When they deal with politics, they tend to veer more into the areas of black conservatism,
Mhm.
where I listen to a lot of podcasts. They kind of go in that direction, but there have been efforts that I've seen over the years just most of Black male media you're going to see is going to be on the internet through podcasts. That's become very popularized in the last few years. And even I'll say even on the Buffalo History Channel, I've made an effort, to try to highlight more black male, make my content with Buffalo History Channel black male centered. I mean, if you look through the channel, we do highlight a lot of black male content. And we doesn't mean that we don't deal with women, because we do. In fact, in March of 2023, we're going to have like a whole line of content focusing on Black women for Women's History Month. So I try to get a balance in there, but I do focus. I tend to put a little extra focus on Black male centered media.
But see, you know what? Hey, it's online.
Right.
And yes, a lot of the attention now is heading toward online content.
Right.
But you know what? There are a lot of people that either A, don't know about it, B, for quiet as this, can't even get online, all right? And they still rely on over the air. And over the air, you don't see you. You don't see anybody that looks like you that is a male. All right.
Right.
Now, hey, like I said earlier, women, how can I say, women, they are so happy to be on television that in the assignment room, when the assignments are passed out during the day,
mm-hmm.
whoever is in charge of passing out assignments will say, hey, I want you to cover, something that's taking place out at the Erie County Fair. Or I want you to cover the penguins that almost got out during the last blizzard at the Buffalo Zoo. All right. And they're happy and they go do things like that. Whereas if a Doug was working there and they said, Doug, I want you to, check out the auto show or, home and garden at the convention center, Doug would say, wait a minute, why don't we do this? Because this here is something that would pertain better for the audience, and it would still help get our numbers up.
I can tell you this. I was I did a brief.
Were looking like,
because I'm reminded of when I was and for the audience, I at one point was in my Buffalo media history. I at one point did a stint as a journalist at YNN. YNN, Your News Now Buffalo. You know what today is Spectrum.
Yeah.
I was on the original staff of that, and I did a little stint as a journalist. You know what they had me mostly cover?
What?
Shootings, violence, spot news.
See?
And it would be a case where I would be there like first thing in the morning, first shift, right? And something would, this information comes over the CB radios,
Mm-hmm.
And mind you, we would have a reporter right there in the newsroom with me. The producer would send now, and you would have spot news. It could be a shooting. It could if it's spot news in the morning, it would really be like a fire or something. And all three stations would have their main reporters out there live, doing live hits.
Mm.
Instead of them sending the white young male reporter,
mm-hmm.
they send me out there.
Thank you.
Every morning, and then even with the shooting and the black on black crime and every stories, something I would come there in the morning, and they would have me do like shoot locators in the morning, and then I would find out that a shooting might have happened like in broad daylight, or that stuff happens broad daylights in the evenings or whatever, when I'm not at the station. But they would never send anybody. They were like too chicken-hearted to even go out there. So as me, the big black man, they'll send me out there first thing in the morning or after or early afternoon when I'm there to just shoot locators. But at not thinking to send somebody out there while the story is going on. You know? So those are just the little things that
you know, it, like I say, when it comes to things like that, it's just really sad how we get played so much. And you know, I'm glad that you mentioned that. And the reason being is this, okay? 1400, all right?
Okay.
Owned by Entercom. They have KISS 98.5, 107.7. They have Star 102.5, WKBW, WGR, WBEN, and then there was AM 1400. Now here we go. If you're familiar with WKRP in Cincinnati, the fictitious radio show that was a television program, Venus Flytrap, all right, and Arthur Carlson and Les Nessman, all right?
I remember.
That station was on the air. Why? Because Mr. Carlson's mother was using it as a tax write-off, all right?
Yep.
So
that's
now,
how WUFO was at one point.
Here you go. And you ready? 1400. The reason why Entercom purchased that station was because, if you remember earlier when I said I was down here building this and I was listening to it,
right?
Everybody who was black in the city of Buffalo was listening to that station. And they had a soul food cafe where you would call the 1-800 number, and then you'd say, it'd ask you to drop a quarter in the jukebox, and you heard the quarter going through the whatchamacallit, and then the song playing, all right? Entercom, just like Malcolm X, when Malcolm X went to the police station and said, where's brother, what's his name? And then he said, look out that window. And when the cop looked out that window, he says, we ain't leaving till we see whoever it was that got beat up. So when they showed him, Denzel Washington did this. All right. And when everybody turned and they left, that police chief said what?
Too much power for one black man, one man to have.
All right. And the exact same idea was behind Entercom getting 1400 because they didn't want a Doug to get that station. So Entercom went and bought it. Now that they have it, they could do what they want. And here we go. This is what really hurt. Here you are trying to do your best to make the station the best that it could be. All right. And many times, James and myself would get a memo. This isn't a black station. We just tell everybody we play good music and let that be it. All right. Whereas they would have Hannity and all these other people spewing hatred on the other stations, and nobody ever said anything. So you got to realize when it came to all that, okay, what they would even do was take the station and they would tell their salespeople, hey, go to this meat market or go to this store or go to this store and get the contract. And just as a little incentive, tell them, hey, you know what? We got this little black station where it's got good numbers and we would just throw your commercials on that station. All right. But when it came to the halal market or when it came to the Avenue Pizza, which is in the black community, or it came to C&B's Men's Shop, all right, those commercials, or even what is it, the Town Garden Apartments, all right, when it came to those commercials, they wouldn't be heard on KISS. They wouldn't be heard on any of the other stations because those commercials were specifically in their mind for 1400. But all the commercials for, like, the what is it, the B&L garage door opener and the stores out in Williamsville, all those they would throw on there because this was part of that salesman's package that he told them that we'll just put on the station and let it play. So, I mean, when you're constantly seeing that, it just does something to your soul inside where over time, you're just like, why is it worth it? So then James, one day, he left, and I'm there for about a good 5 years by myself. I'm holding the numbers up, and they're letting me do whatever I want, all right? And then James, he's over at WUFO now. And James says, Don, come on, man. I need you over here, all right? And then Doug Ruffin, he walks into the studio one day, and he sits down behind the microphone, and all of a sudden I come walking in, and it's like, man, you over here now, huh? So there you go.
Hey, man, one thing about Buffalo Jocks, we get around.
We get around. But you know what? The thing is, though, it's only, 2 or 3 stations that we have access to.
That's true.
And then it's like, for you have your John Tesh. He is on multiple stations. And at first I was saying, how is this happening? Because a lot of times you would always hear, well, he won't be on the same station in the same market. All right. Whereas now you'll hear him on the Lake. You'll hear him on, what is that? The 96.1 Joy. All right. At the same time, because he kind of took the place of, what was that young lady's name that got in trouble for saying the N-word?
I think it's been over the years. There's been a few of them that said they say it or make a so-called slip of the tongue, and the next thing you know, somebody will blast them on social.
Wasn't it Delilah?
Okay, right. Delilah, you are right. You are right.
And she was on 96.1. And I guess somebody called up and they got her pissed off. And she said, well, I'm going to say it. And then she said it like 2 or 3 times. That's just like your boy over at
I gotta find that again. I gotta see if I can find that audio. I haven't heard. I almost forgot about that until you reminded me about that.
Man. And that's just like, what's his name? He was over at he said the nappy-headed hose. Well, Don
Imus, yeah.
Don Imus. So see, these white folk are getting real comfortable saying things like this, Well, you say it all the time. But Doug, what is the difference between that? Why is it that we can call each other that and say it all the time, and it's nothing, but if they say it, now it's all about a frenzy? Why?
That's it's certainly not something that I completely agree with, but the popular thing is that we deem it as a term of endearment is what we do. Exactly.
Come on.
Which is like, okay.
Yeah. Now, one other thing, and it just goes to show you vocabulary and vernacular, all right? Jimmy Smith. When I was working at Heaven 1120, WNY, all right? And then right down the hall was WHLD, all right, 1270. Now, and that was John Young that put that little idea together for 1270 at the very beginning, where if you had $50, you could go in there and do a show and let your friends know, hey, you're on the radio, one of those kind of things.
I remember.
So, when the station manager died, Mike Bremer took over that, all right? Bobby Love, myself, Jimmy Smith, and Carl Reese, who was over at True Bethel, we were all on the air there. Well, something happened where Citadel wasn't getting all the money that they wanted. So they were threatening to take the station back, kick everybody else off. They were going to take the station back and take it and do what they wanted to do with that frequency. Well, what happened was there was a guy by the name of Brian Cash Dollar. All right.
Yes.
What he did, he somehow finagled, got the station, and he moved it over to the Tri-Main building. Okay. And at the Tri-Main
Okay.
building,
I remember that. Okay.
all right. What happened was myself and Jimmy Smith were the only two people that he brought along. But because my mother had always told me to speak correct diction, okay, and this was something even that James said to me. He says, you know, Don, whenever you're on the air, you can have longevity because you don't sound like a black guy. You know, when a person listens to you, they're trying to figure out, wait, is he black? Is he white? Okay. So I think that's kind of like why Brian snatched me instead of letting me go to unemployment, and he brought me over there. But he brought Jimmy Smith over there. And when they had Jimmy Smith in there, I'll never forget this. Jimmy Smith, you know, he had like a little stigma in his eye, and he'd kind of like look at his copy. And the way he would talk, it threw them off. So it was the same thing that happened to oh man, what's his name at WNBC? Whenever Howard Stern. If you ever saw the movie, all right, he says, remember, you got to say WNBC, WNBC. Well, these Brian Cash Dollar and his white program director was trying to tell Jimmy Smith, you don't say the voice of reason. You don't say like, yo, this is the voice of reason. No, you got to say the voice of reason, you know, WHLD. And Jimmy Smith was like, look, man, this is how I talk. You know, so it's the way how somebody will think that you have to try to conform to the way they think that you should be, when in actuality, we are all individuals. We all have our own talent, because Jimmy, he was a person that you could set him down in front of a board and not tell him nothing about it. And within 40 seconds, he can do everything that you'd be able to do. And it was the same way when Chuck E. T., when I showed him how to run the board over at BLK. And it was the same way how it was with Freddie Patrick the day when I showed him how to run the board over at BLK. So, I mean, like, some people, we just have that knack, that ability to, you could set us down, let us go, and we can showcase the talent that we were given to by God. That's all. That's just like you. You know, I would sit back and I would watch how you do your thing. And you see, like I said earlier, the theater of the mind. You know, you would get on there and this Doug Ruffin with Neo Soul. You know, sounded like a little bit like Venus Flytrap. You know what I mean? Yes, my children. We're 32,000 feet up in the air, and he'd ring the gong.
I should have tried that one of them days.
But see, you know what? That is the showmanship, the talent that is in all of us. And luckily, we grew up in a time where it was appreciated, and because of the fact we knew how to handle ourselves, it was able to blossom. It was able to flourish. Some people, they were able to get out of Buffalo and take it to the next step, like your Double D and, you know, what's his name, Gary Bird and you.
Frankie Crocker and all them.
Yeah, thank you. But there was a lot of us, man, we just, hey, we were hard-headed and stayed here, you know, so there you go. That's right.
I mean, we were really, and that was during a time when you really had to, you know, many of the conversations and interviews I've done, they've all agreed, you know, that was when you really had to have it. You had to have that it factor.
And they couldn't tell you what it was.
And if you didn't, and if you didn't have it, if you were in that booth and you wasn't expressing it, they would come in there, take off your headsets and kick you out of that booth.
Hello, that's right. You know,
and you were treated like said you were also seen as celebrities back then too. Sonny.
I'm
That's kind of
surprised you
dissipated.
even remembered that because
Yeah.
you never had to experience it.
No, I didn't. I mean, we had those were the stories that I heard when I was working at WUFO, interviews that I've conducted over time. They've all had those. I've heard those stories consistently. They also had something else. Even when I wouldn't even say when I was at BLK, I would hear this when I was going through the college classes. That before you didn't get to talk on the air unless you learned production first. See?
Yes, yes. That was one of the main things. They would put you in that. That's like when I first got at BLK,
Mm-hmm.
as bad as I wanted to be on the air, that's all I wanted to do.
Right.
They threw me right in production. They threw me right into the news.
Right.
And I spent a good 6 months just there doing that.
Right.
But then, like I say, one evening, Mansfield, he just broke that camel's back with that last straw. And I mean, that was it. So I was just thrown on the air after that. Yeah. Man, those were some good old days.
Yeah.
I really enjoyed it, and that was a part of my life, that hey, I'll never forget. But there's still a lot more to go. You know what I mean? And especially now with this media that we're even talking on. I mean, come on, look how many basements you have, studios like this where people, or even you could rent a space in what is it, the plaza downtown.
Yeah, everybody's making their own media. Everybody's making their own media now.
Their own media.
Content creators.
Big money.
Yeah.
And big money.
Yeah.
So now I know Doug has got to take it up a notch.
Oh yeah. We all do.
Excellent. Anything else you need to know?
Well, I mean, that's pretty much. I mean, what everything that you see in media in the local Buffalo media in present day, I mean, how would you compare it? I mean, with everything that everybody has their own media and now, and you have, I know you have this, Buffalo's trying to come up into the filmmaking game now. They have studios getting built out there now. So when you look at that, how would you compare and contrast that to how things were back in the day when as blacks in media, we were just trying to just get a foothold, get our foot in the door?
The people back then, all right, they were a lot more creative, and they figured out how to, I want to say, make certain things happen. For instance, I don't know if you know, there was a beautiful soul. He just recently passed, Al Garrison. All right. There was Al Garrison. There was Pat Cray and his brother Letley. Now, there used to be a place called Maxwell's on the corner of Main and East Ferry, in the community, and across the street was New Skateland. All right. If you take the word disco and run it backwards, you have Oxid. Okay. Now, Oxid, just to show you how creativity was back then compared to now, the Apollo Theater on Jefferson Avenue, Al and Pat put together a program, and I was Oxid. I came on a mini bike with, imagine, George Clinton with the whole getup on and the big flying cape and everything behind me, right? I came down Jefferson, the doors were open. I came down the center aisle. The mini bike, I turned it off, had it in neutral, rolled down to the stage, jumped up on stage. The place was packed, and we just had an open disco in the Apollo Theater. All right.
Okay.
On Friday and Saturday, it was at Maxwell's. So the thing is, back then, you have people that have creativity, had a bigger vision. And nowadays, because of the fact that we are holding ourselves back. You don't see that bigger vision on television nowadays, and it's just the same plethora of rerun entertainment constantly 24 hours a day. You know how many, okay, yeah, you may have a good idea where America's Got Talent, but I mean, come on, that even plays itself out. But the problem is you have those that are making so much money on it, they want to try to milk it for all that it's worth. All right. And you could go right across the board with the exact same plan. And it's a lot of things that we should be further in media than we are right now. We really should, because this is sadness. It almost makes it, I mean, look at it. People nowadays, they are looking for entertainment any way they can, because local entertainment it's stagnant. It's stagnant. That's why people go and they create their own entertainment platforms on YouTube and all these other Facebook. And you know, you have the girls. And Doug, tell me, are we as a people that what's the word I'm looking for? Are we as a people that gullible, I guess, that somebody can say something to a woman and now she's taking her clothes off and bent over and she's twerking? Is this what the young men today have to pick from? I mean, come on, do the kings look at their future queens? Is this what young men today have to pick from? And the women, these females, they think that this is what we want, when in actuality it's not. You know, and then here's the bad part. If you try and say something, you see a girl, right? There was this one young lady on, I think it was Facebook. She had half of a dress on. One half of her cheek was showing, the other half was in wide open. All right. You type on
Probably
there.
It's a few like that.
Woman,
Which one?
Do you think this is sexy? This isn't. Put some clothes on. Do you know what happens? They ban you for a day because it's against community standards that you are saying this about somebody else.
Right. They'll tend to ban you for doing just the opposite thing. So yeah.
Right. I mean, but you know what? The thing is, and here's the bad part. If you type it, their algorithm will see it and they'll ban you. Whereas if you wrote it on a piece of paper, took a picture, and then put the picture there, it's fine because the algorithm can't read it.
Or if you have some people I know have a thing where they'll type something and they'll do like acronyms and change letters and everything.
Yeah. And you know, here's the thing about Twitter, all right, and that's this.
Yeah, I don't tweet.
Here we go. And you see, you know what? A lot of people, they say that Donald Trump was crazy about what he said as far as trying to ban, I guess it was Twitter in the United States. Now, I wasn't a Donald Trump fan. All right, that Make America Great Again. Yeah, when was it ever great? Like T.I. said, okay. But here's the killer, and that's this. When you're in China and you look at TikTok, the algorithm only lets you see or post something positive. In China, the women are reading a book, they're learning how to make money, they're doing something positive for the family or the community. That same algorithm, TikTok in America, shows you got a snake and you're raising her dress up and you're letting this fake snake crawl up so she'll jump up and scream, or it's something stupid and crazy. So you see, what we as a people need to be able to do is understand that, see it, and either A, not support it by looking or clicking on this kind of stuff, or I mean, doing something different.
Yeah.
Really. So I really don't know. I
Gotta
really
find a way to filter it out. But Don, it's been a pleasure to have you on
Who you talking
Buffalo
about?
History Channel. I knew I had to get you on, brother. I knew I had to get you on.
You know what? And I can guarantee you this one thing that a lot of people are going to be saying, man, that dude, he had some good ideas, but he's a nut, ain't he? But you know, before I go,
Yeah.
there's just one thing that I want to say, and that is this. First of all, thank you for getting in contact with me.
Absolutely.
And asking me to spend this time with you. And one thing that I wanted to say to those that are looking at the two of us now, two African American men who just want to not only try and entertain, but to educate at the exact same time. And that is this. And it's really something. Do you know who Andre Brower is?
Yes.
Okay, Andre Brower, he played Benjamin O. Davis in the Tuskegee Airmen. All right. Now, it's really something that happened back in the 40s. If you change a couple of words around, still has meaning today, and it really shouldn't. And especially after we just had our Martin Luther King Day a couple of days ago. All right. And that's this. He says, and I change a couple of words around to us here in Buffalo because we've gone through so much recently with your top shooting and everything else, right?
The blizzard and everything, yeah.
The blizzard. So my take on that is this. Every African American in Buffalo, New York goes through their own private hell every day. Every one of us carry not only the burden of our dreams of becoming a productive citizen, but the hopes of an entire people as well. Am I the only one in this room that understands just what that means? I was brought up to believe that beneath it all, in Buffalo, one thing is this. I was brought up to believe that America is a decent country with an abiding sense of integrity and fair play. The cheers heard across this country when Joe Louis and Jesse Owens humiliated Hitler's master race didn't just come from a bunch of proud colored folk. It came from everyone. How am I to interpret that? As a black male living in the United States, there's no greater conflict within me. How do I feel about my country? And how does my country feel about me? Are we only to be Americans when the mood suits? A fair and impartial opportunity is all we ask. Nothing that you yourselves wouldn't demand. So there you go. And you know what Maya Angelou says, right? People are going to forget what you said. People are going to forget what you did. But what's the last line? People will never forget how you made them feel.
That's
and
right.
Doug, you make people feel good inside. Thank you, brother.
I do the best I can. Robinson, it was a pleasure to have you on the Buffalo History.
Same here.
All
Same
right.
here.
All right.